You're listening to Guts and Grind with Siju and Sajan, making the real estate journey accessible to anyone.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Guts and Grind. We're so happy that you clicked and you're joining us. Today is episode 31, and we are talking about what type of property you should be looking for. So before we get started, Siju, anything new going on in life?
There's always new things. I'm actually in Arkansas doing some work, but outside of that, no. Still plugging away. You know, that's our goal is always real estate. You know, trying to see what the next deal is, next move is. But other than that, on our end, we're all good. How about you?
Yeah. So we're in the middle of a project regarding real estate. We're in the middle of one project, trying to get that stabilized and get a tenant in there. So it's one of those where we're putting a bunch of work into it to get it ready. But you know, that's kind of, we knew that walking into it, right? Like we bought it at a discount knowing that we had to fix it up. And so now we're just going through those growing pains of fixing it up and, you know, just rolling with it. But it's nothing too complex. Like so far it's going pretty smoothly. I have a great contractor and he's kind of knocking things out. So it's good.
Nice.
But yeah, man, let's dive into it. Well, you know, talking about property. When I initially talk about real estate, I'm always thinking about the house that I'm living in, right? Like a single family home, a family of four, white picket fence, that kind of stuff, right? And it's like, that is real estate. That is what it is. And like, that's what I invest in, those single family homes that we're all used to. But there's so many different other types of properties that you could get into. And so when we talk about the types of property, just for example, there's a single family home, like I talked about. There are duplexes, and duplexes are basically two living quadrants in one building, right? And that could be multiplied into a triplex, a fourplex, and things like that. Once you get above 5, I think that turns into the commercial realm. And Sid, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically like a small apartment complex. Then you can get to larger scale things like bigger apartment complexes or even commercial buildings where like Walmart might rent from you, or Kroger's, or, you know, a grocery store, whatever it might be. And so those are, generally speaking, what's out there. Personally, I'm in single family home realm, but I'm very excited about jumping into like multifamily because I feel like that's, for me at least, that's like the next step, you know, of getting more cash flow and having more systems in place. It just seems very appealing. I just haven't found the deal yet. So that's kind of the options that you have: single family, multifamily, commercial. That's the broad sense. And then even within those factors, there's other cut ups, right? Because when we talk about multifamily, is it a duplex? Is it a 500 unit apartment complex? Like, I don't know. It's whatever you're willing to take on.
Yeah, and great point. Just to add on to that, and you're 100% right. In the residential space, those are the classifications: single family, multi, and then commercial, right? So when you get into apartment complexes, and the apartment complexes can range from mid-size to, you know, your hundreds of units, right? The one thing to keep in mind is, you kind of touched on it, was residential. It's considered a residential when it's 4 units or less. So when you're single family, all the way up to your duplexes, which are basically one building with 2 separated living, like you said, or triplexes, which are 3, and quads, which are 4 units. So which means one building with 4 different units in it. So your real estate residential contracts go up to 4 units that you can actually put a bid on it. It's called a residential loan. So from a lending side, you have to make sure you're 4 and under. So anything more than 4, it's considered a commercial property, and you have to get a commercial loan. So keep that in mind. But yeah, when we're talking about getting your first property, I mean, you know, we always say just jump and try one, right? And so the next one, like Saj, like you're saying, I have a duplex myself, but you know, it just scales, right? It scales better, and actually the numbers probably work better too, because you're probably going to get the multifamilies are usually a little bit discounted. I don't know about now. The market's so inflated that, you know, you may be paying double for it, right? But essentially, when you analyze a single family property, you're doing the same thing when you do it for multi, right? It doesn't change. You're just basically scaling up. So, you know, as we speak, you know, definitely our focus is to make you guys and help you guys at least get one property. And then from there, you know, the sky's the limit. You can claim whatever you want. You can get into duplexes, mids, and multis later on.
Right. And so, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong. So a part of me, I view the multifamily world as a scale up, but really, as far as like managing it, it would essentially be the same, right? As far as like, if you have a single family home, you're still dealing with the tenant, you're still dealing with making sure the house is like, you know, ready to move in and like a good livable space for that person. You're still doing all those things. So I think the systems are still the same. It's just like kind of like what you mentioned before. the lending. If you go 5 and above, you're turning into commercial lender. You have to go to a commercial lender rather than a residential, right?
Correct.
Would you agree with that, or am I missing the mark there?
No, you are. Everything else is pretty much the same. Of course, it changes a little bit when you get super big into the apartments, but yeah, you are 100% right. So anything over 4 units, you're gonna have to go to get a commercial lender, right? And I haven't gotten down that route yet.
Right.
Mine's are all in the residential space, so that's what
Right.
I have and
I,
what I
I
know.
kind of I romanticize the whole multifamily world because I feel like, wouldn't that be great just to have one property with 10 units, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Or one piece of land where it's like 10, because you could even consider an RV park, right?
oh
Like
yeah,
where people
yeah.
live there. You just buy a piece of land and you allow people to just lease out the land for them to park
Hmm.
their RVs or whatever it might be, right? And
Yeah.
so I just romanticize that because I'm like, oh wow, I could just have like someone at location taking care of things. Like if a problem comes up, oh yeah, just call so and so at unit 1 and he'll come and fix it. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure I'm wrong. I'm sure there's like, there's more to it than that, but it just feels like it's a great idea.
No,
Um,
no, I think you're right. That is, and then adding on to property types that you can invest in. There's commercial, actually retail commercial, right? So when we say
right.
residential commercial, that's the apartments. Then to piggyback onto what you said about mobile park homes, those are a different type of property class. Then you have commercial retail spots, which are your retail strip malls
Right.
and things like that. So there's a ton of different property types, and it just really depends on what you want. I think the key is you have to hone into what you want to get and
Yeah.
focus in on that, because it can get super overwhelming. Like, I mean, there's so many property classes. If you're a newbie trying to get into it and you just think about all the different types that are out there, you can get easily overwhelmed. I think the key is get your feet wet and just get excited about getting that first and knowing what the cash flowing looks like, how it looks to analyze the deal and get it. And that's why I always think a single family is always the perfect like starter. It's the
Right.
gateway into this, like,
It's the gateway drug. So like I wanted to piggyback on that because I totally agree. Like for the most part, people live in a single family home. And so they understand it a little bit more. It makes more sense. You know what it takes to mow the lawn or to, like just maintain a house. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like it just kind of makes sense and it's very easy to. And so for me, like after a few of these properties, you kind of get used to that rhythm. But I also want to be mindful of the fact that you get comfortable and it's hard to grow when you're comfortable, right? And so get into it with a single family home, right?
yeah.
But don't get too comfortable because you want to be able to grow, go up to that next level, go into a duplex, go into a triplex, and
Oh
just kind
yeah.
of feel that out, and just kind of grow. But Sidju's right. Like I mean personally, and of course you can make your own decision. But personally, I would say if you start off in a single family home, it also has the ability of having a little bit more stable tenants, like people that want to be in a single family home, they're probably looking at schools, they're probably looking at for the long term. Like my second property that we lived in and we moved out of, like it's the same tenants that are still there. And so they're like long-term tenants because, one, the neighborhood's great, the schools are great, the location's great. And so all those things kind of play into a factor. And, and this is not, I'm saying a blanket statement, but it's not correct. When you talk about like multifamily, like apartments, there's potential for a quicker turnaround. So that's something to consider as well. So when we talk about the whole which property type you're looking for, those are factors that you have to consider, right? You might not be heavy on the cash flow with a single family home as you might be with a multifamily, but there's stability there. Again, this is all depending on the market and stuff like that, but I don't want to like bog down too much on this. Like we could maybe shift over to the next category that we want to talk about, the different classes. So with any property type, there are different classes. There's class A, B, C, D, it kind of goes from there. And it kind of ties into what we're just talking about, where if you're in a good area and you could charge higher rents and there's better amenities and things like that, you would consider that as a class A. And so there's different clientele for each classes. Any comments on that, Siju?
No, I think that was a good segue onto, how you said your first rental property, the people that have lived there forever, or I mean, since you've been renting it out. And a reason of that is probably an A class neighborhood, or what we
Right.
consider A class, right? So it's like a grading system, just like you're doing normally in school. A means good, D means bad. So yeah, if you have an A class property, that means it's in a great location, crime's low, schools are good. Also the condition of the property as well. It's not run down, it's well kept up, right? Those all are factors when they actually put this hypothetical grading scale on a property. But yeah, so again, in some places, it's okay to buy a B or C class property because the numbers work well. And there's always a need for it too. Not to say that, hey, don't look at anything, B and down, because I would consider some of my properties are in the B and C areas. Honestly, I wouldn't go as far as D, to be honest with you. D I would consider is you're getting shot at while you're trying to go check on your house, or
Right.
that kind of thing, and it's run down, it's not well
Right.
kept up. So I would always, consider an A, B, or C class property, but anything outside of that, I wouldn't kind of touch on. But know that those are the grading scales when it comes to the types of property that's out
Sure,
there.
sure. And the grading scale really is so you could be mentally prepared on what you're getting yourself into. So, although we're saying A, B, maybe C or whatever, like that shouldn't scare you off from doing C or D or whatever, right? You just have to know what you're walking into. And so when we talk about what type of property, just to wrap this up, it's consider what type in regards of single family, multifamily, commercial. And then also the next level would be class A, B, or C, or D, or whatever it might be, right? And then once you determine, and really your budget might be the determining factor, right? Your budget, your bandwidth of like wanting to deal with headaches or not. Like, those factors are what you're going to be considering when you want to dive into a property. And so, yeah, that's basically it. Like, was there any final thoughts that you want to share, Siju?
No, I think you're 100% right. You kind of nailed it at the very end, closing it out. But a lot of factors can be determined by the amount of money you bring to the table, right? So,
Right.
but don't let any of that stop you. I think the biggest thing is taking that first step. This is all part of the journey of narrowing down and finding that one niche, whatever it is, right? So you can get started, right? So just stay motivated and focus on these things, and hopefully these kind of help you guide that and make that form that decision.
Right. And wrapping up, like I like to say, everything is figure outable, like when you but just take the first step, like get in there, And so when we say these things, like these are our opinions and these are what we think. And like, in our experiences, what we've seen, but that doesn't mean that your story can't be different. Right.
Yep.
So as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of this, community that we're trying to build. If you have any questions, comments, please comment at whatever platform you're watching this on, and we'll do our best to respond, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to Guts and Grind with Siju and Sajan. Be sure to tune in next time.